Hello, and welcome to this episode of Quakerism. In this episode, we're going to be looking at Quakerism and the Monarchy. How do they fit together? So I've been thinking about this video for a while now. Obviously, hopefully not revealing this dramatically to anyone, but Queen Elizabeth II died last September, and we are in the process of coronating our new king, Charles III. And so, obviously, it's got me thinking about the monarchy more generally. I think quite a lot of people are doing that. But then I was also quite interested to read an article from Quakers in Britain quite recently about a loyal address that Quakers gave to Charles III. Um, as we are, Quakers in Britain are a privileged body. What does that mean? I had no idea. And what? And so this kind of all came to a head, and so I thought, well, okay, well, what is Quakerism's relationship with the monarchy, and what should it be going forward? I'm going to try as best as I can to keep this nice and neutral. Not going to throw about my views about monarchy too much, um, because I'm trying to understand what Quakerism's view of the monarchy is, not mine. So I suppose you've got to start off with the start of Quakerism, as I so often do. But actually, this is quite important because Quakerism started during a very difficult period of British history regarding the monarchy, that being the English Civil War, where the question of should there be a monarchy was really being asked in a very brutal way, ultimately leading, obviously, to the beheading of Charles I. There's also a lot of Charleses in Quakerism and the monarchy, so read into that what you will. So I don't know actually if any Quakers were fighting in the civil. I mean, I'm sure they were, but I don't think it was ever made that much of a big deal. I think James Naylor was in the army. Don't know, but I mean, it's not really important for Quakerism because when Quakerism was actually starting in the 1650s, Charles I had already been executed. So this was happening in the time of the Protectorate, as it's known, or the English Republic, or the Commonwealth as well. So we're in this period where there was no monarchy, and this is where Quakerism was born. In this time there was a certain degree of religious tolerance, and so Quakers flourished in this environment. And it all came crumbling down when Charles II came along. Ah, dear. And so, with Charles II coming back, so too did the Church of England in all of its forms which the Quakers had come to loathe. So, with all the bishops and the bread and the wine and the baptizing and the tithes and all of that. And so began until for a good 20 years of ruthless oppression and of Quakers by the authorities under the government of Charles I. Charles II. Charles II. Charles II. And so I can kind of imagine 20 years is a long time. That's a generation. I can kind of understand that probably quite a lot of Quakers weren't very pro Charles II because Quakers died in prison. They had to hold their meetings private, secretively, or at least that was the idea. Apparently, quite a lot of Quakers just didn't care and just did it anyway. Go them. But it was difficult, and so I don't know what I can't really imagine that would be a very positive opinion of the king. But we don't really have any evidence of that ill will. Really, what we do have is a very important letter for Quakerism, which is an address to Charles II from Quakers. In this is effectively the beginnings of what became the peace testimony by Quakers. So they wrote to Charles II. I think Margaret Fell was the main architect of this, and it was all about basically saying to Charles II that, look, we are peaceable people and we're not out there to be causing any ruckus or revolution. Absolutely not. Not us. We are peaceable Quakers. We don't believe in fighting. This is all in the period where there had been revolts against the monarchy by religious sects, and Quakers in this time were constantly being associated with the bad ones, like the Ranters and the Fifth Monarchy men and all those people. Um, and so I I kind of read this letter. Yes, of course, they use very abasing language when talking to the king because he's been coming after them, and so fair enough. And saying, "Oh no, we're very peaceful. We're not going to do that." And of course, that fits in very well with our testimony as well. I'm not trying to get away from that, but I think also an understanding of trying to end this relentless oppression, which eventually did come in the Act of Toleration. So I suppose after that time, that initial period of Quakerism, where obviously Quakerism was founded where there was no king, we now still have a king since those times. So how has Quakerism or Quakers reacted with the monarchy? Well, for most of the 1700s and quite a lot of the 1800s as well, although Quakers were tolerated, they weren't in any way allowed to be part of the state in any major way. So you couldn't go to Oxford or Cambridge, you couldn't sit in Parliament, you certainly couldn't be a lord, and probably Quakers probably wouldn't want to be, so it wouldn't be any in part of the nobility. So the connection between the Quakers and the monarchy probably wasn't very big because the Quakers were doing their best to keep themselves out of the world, and weren't really able to participate. So therefore, the chances for meeting were obviously very slim. So then let's come back to this privileged bodies thing. So what is that? So they are, according to Wikipedia, they are just bodies which are culturally significant to the UK. And they include a very strange mixture of people. Quite a lot of them are religious, so the Catholic Church of England and Wales in there, the Anglican Church is in there, obviously. Quakers are in there. Lots of universities are in there. The Bank of England is in there. So it's quite a strange mix of people. But what does it mean being a privileged body? Historically, what it meant is that in person, Quakers could address the monarch, which is great. That sounds like a good idea, but surely everyone should have that privilege. No? Oh well. Good that Quakers do at least. And as it's gone on through history, this role has mainly been only exercised when at significant moments. So this is why this all came out, because I saw that Quakers were doing what was being called a loyal address to Charles III. Um, and I just had no idea. So apparently, as I said, this apparently Quakers addressed the Queen 6 times in her reign, which is quite not a lot considering she ruled for so long, but and apparently there was a bit of controversy in the 80s in regards to nuclear weapons, where Quakers felt moved to speak to the monarch as a way to stop nuclear armament, and effectively were told that they should go to the government instead. What's the point of being a privileged body if you can't speak to the Queen when you want? Anyway, but and so here we are. So then we're here as modern Quakers, being a privileged body, being able to give a loyal address to Charles III. What do we do with that? Well, I don't know. I think the idea of a loyal address is quite interesting, because I think the way that I think that this could be worked very well, and I've talked to a couple of people about this, is if Quakers use this as an opportunity to speak truth to power. So if we use this as a good way to say, well, we want these changes. Talking about all the things that we're protesting against. Against war, for better equality in the UK or in the world, and things like that, and not necessarily just pandering to those in power, which a loyal address kind of sounds that way, doesn't it? I suppose you can be loyal, but you can say, look, we don't believe in this. Interestingly, and my respects to them, uh, young Quakers in Britain refused to partake, and the reason why they said so was because they felt that they couldn't give a loyal address because they didn't feel that they were necessarily loyal to the monarchy in any way. I tweeted about this. a part of me quite likes the idea about being a privileged body. That sounds nice. I like being part of a privileged body, and I can theoretically talk to King Charles whenever I want. No, it's not like that, but you know what I mean. That sounds cool. I like being part of a privileged body. However, should I? I don't think I should like being part of a privileged body. I think surely everyone should have the right to address the monarch if it's an important matter. And certainly it shouldn't be a couple of universities, a couple of religious groups, and the Bank of England that should really have that special say. I think it's a very un-Quaker thing to be sort of exclusive in this way and being this privileged body. I think with the Church of England, for example, being the state church, we can sort of understand that they're going to have that privileged position. We could argue whether or not they should, but we can understand why maybe they do. However, Quakerism, well, Quakers don't really have that connection with the state, and so you kind of think, well, why do we need that? If we're not going to use that for like an actual like cool thing, like let's talk to the king and let's say what we think is wrong in the world, speaking truth to the power. I think speaking truth to power, that sounds excellent. However, it doesn't really seem to be that. And also, it doesn't really work anyway, because the king has no power. The King Charles III has not anywhere near the power that Charles I or Charles II had. So I know that, the state of the monarchy is something that's being discussed quite rightly in the UK. Yeah, where are we going with that? I'm not going to say my own personal opinion, but that's something that I think is a conversation worth having. We're at a milestone in the British monarchy. Why would we not have that conversation? And so I suppose, like with that, we also need to maybe consider what the Quaker position is on the monarchy. Um, is the idea of the monarchy consistent with our understanding of our testament is and Quaker faith and practice? Should we be a privileged body? And if we are going to be a privileged body, what does that mean? And how can we use that in a Quaker way? Obviously, if we're only going to, if we met with Queen Elizabeth only 6 times in however many years it was, well, what's that doing? And, I think it has to be useful. If we're going to be sort of besmirched with the name privileged, then we've got to actually do something with it, and it's got to be meaningful, and it's got to be good, and it's got to be upholding Quaker values. Not to say that the address wasn't. I'll post a link down there below. I'm not saying it wasn't at all. I'm just saying this sort of I didn't know about this, and I kind of felt like as a Quaker I should know that we're part of this group of people, and that we have this ability, and that's being used in a good way. It kind of just felt, oh gosh, oh yeah, we're this. Sort of a mistake of history. So there we go. We're a privileged body. Should we be? I don't know. I think it's been quite a turbulent story. I don't think we're two parts which go hand in hand necessarily. I think it is something which requires a conversation. It's not as simple as with the Church of England, where obviously the king is the head of the church, so they fit very nicely together. I don't think Quakerism and the monarchy fit as nicely together, and so it has to be a conversation as to where do we fit with that. What do you are you more on the side of the young Quakers that decided not to go to this address, or should we use this to our advantage in order to promote peace, equality, truth, and so on? Let me know. What do you think?
Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please do click on the thumbs up button, and do check out some of my other videos about Quakerism in the UK. If you want to keep up to date with the latest videos, please do remember to subscribe as well. It really helps. Thank you.